Come on, Squish, you can do it! Pull through, bud!
Come on, man, come on!
Yeah, he looks pretty crappy.
This magic moment.
Hey, buddy, watch this.
Hey folks, in this video we're going to be talking about some cards that have got some CPR. They've been brought back to life in the Saviors of Old New Meta. In other words, their play rates went from barely being played at all to actually being significant cards in the meta these days. Now, you may hear some sounds in the background. There's literally a concert happening in the street right outside my apartment. It happens every year, so forgive me if there's some noise back there. Hopefully YouTube won't ban my account for playing songs. We'll just have to take the risk to get this video done. So that said, let's jump into this list. Up first here, I have the injured Blade Master, and you'll note below the card here, I've included some statistics as well, a chart that showcases the play rate over time for injured Blade Master coming from hsreplay.net. And as you'll see, less than 1% played prior to Saviors of Old Doom, but as people have discovered Combo Priest, this card has just continued to climb, becoming a both popular and really important part of that deck, and a significant one in the meta. It turns out having a body that is easy to heal to a high health total is really, really nice when you're looking to buff your minions, get some early game pressure, and then off of a card like Psychopomp, reviving this thing at the full health total is pretty amazing as well. So it's a perfect turn 3 into turn 4 curve for Combo Priest, which is arguably right now the best deck in Hearthstone. So Injured Blade Master has been played in the past, long ago. This isn't the first time we've ever seen this card be competitive, but nonetheless, it's been a bit, and the meta finally lined up for Priest to make sense with this one. It's kind of a Priest card in a way, it feels like. So will this card continue to gain ground in the meta? I actually think it will. I think Combo Priest is still a little bit less popular than it should be based on its win rate, so expect to see Injured Blade Master continuing to climb, and I'm pretty excited to see this card back in the limelight these days. So moving on now, let's take a look at Flame Strike. And although Flame Strike is really one of the most iconic cards in Hearthstone, it's the go-to example I always use for an AoE card, we don't really see it played that much historically in Hearthstone. There have been some grindier, slower defensive mage decks, some freeze mage decks out there that were able to utilize this, but usually Frost Nova and Blizzard have taken the wins over Flame Strike when you're looking for some kind of AoE defensive tool in Mage. So Flame Strike has really been left out quite a bit, and as you can see from the chart here, that is no longer true. It has gained a ton of ground lately because, of course, now there's a lot of successful ways to play Mage, and it turns out with cards like Tortollan Pilgrim, well, guess what? Flame Strike's pretty amazing because you can get a minion, you can find it in your deck more consistently, and then just wipe your opponent's stuff, and killing things is a good thing to do in Hearthstone. So a card that you might be a little bit surprised to see on this list just because it feels like such a big part of the game and it's just so recognizable, but it actually was kind of dead for a while there. Even recently with Mage's success and Cyclone Mages of the past expansion, Flame Strike didn't make the cut as actually a played card. You'd get it randomly sometimes, but it never made the list. But nowadays it does. The big spell package is pretty good. King Phaoris even works rather nicely with Flame Strike as well. So a handful of different reasons this card is back. Speaking of mage cards, we have another one here with Pyroblast. And Pyroblast, I feel like, has almost been more of a meme than a real competitive card in Hearthstone to most people. You always talk about, oh my god, they're going to get Pyroblasted in the face. But it was so rare to actually see because Pyroblast was very seldom run in a real deck. I can remember a couple of decks in the past, some burn decks that would maybe toss in one Pyroblast at the end just to have some kind of out. But most of the time, this one, again, fell short to other cheaper, more flexible burn options like Fireballs and Frostbolts and Ice Lances and those sorts of things historically throughout Hearthstone. But now that the big spell package is back in action and cards like King Phaoris are in the meta, suddenly having a 10 mana spell is pretty amazing. And then Kalikos can also work really well with Pyroblast. You can get a minion and throw out tons of damage. So as you'll see from this chart, there are in fact some lists that have made Pyroblast a priority in their decks. It's not as popular as Flame Strike right now, but nonetheless, it has gone from virtually zero play to being over 5% of the meta at certain points in Savers of Uldum so far, which is pretty crazy to see. I love that this big bomb of a card actually exists in real competitive Hearthstone. That's amazing. So now let's take a look at Starfall for Druid, a card that has clearly come back into prominence because of the Druid quest, because Starfall on its own has seen some play in the past. It's that 2 damage AoE is kind of okay. It's not great for 5 mana. It compares pretty poorly to other options that do similar sorts of things. Worse than a Consecration, worse than a Holy Nova, worse than a Blizzard, but it always had the flexibility too where you could deal 5 with it if needed, but still worse than so many other options yet again, including Druid's own Starfire, I would argue is much better for dealing single target damage. So Starfall, it felt like always just kind of landed somewhere in the gap where it just didn't seem to do anything super well, and therefore it never made the cut despite that increased flexibility. But it turns out when you get to do both at once, kill a big thing for 7 damage and also kill a bunch of smaller stuff for 3, that makes the math fantastic. And Starfall becomes a great inclusion for Quest Druid decks to help them stabilize in the mid game. After they've completed their quest, this one usually lines up pretty well to kind of make a big swing turn. Then they can start to use the influence of that double effect quest to just really counter pressure their opponent. So Starfall is a fantastic fit, and that's why we've seen it go from, again, virtually zero play. It spiked up over 10% early in the expansion when people were really trying to make Quest Druid work. As we've seen Quest Druid fall a little bit in power level, it's not as popular at the moment, but when it is, Starfall is still there. I considered another card like Cenarius for this slot in the video, but if you looked at Cenarius' stats, he fell even harder than Starfall and never peaked quite as highly. I think that's because he's a much later game card and not all decks want to run that. So it turns out Starfall was the most representative card to capture the increased usage of choose one cards. There's other ones like War Druid Lodi out there too, but I thought Starfall made the most interesting one to talk about. So it's kind of representative of all those Druid choose one cards, but nonetheless, it is the star of this video. So finally here, let's take a look at the Bog Slosher. This was a card I was always rooting for because I thought it just made sense, right? Reasonable stats. It's got elemental synergies. It's got a really cool effect that's way better than something like Youthful Brewmaster because it has this like buff bundled in with it. But despite all those cool elements, it just didn't quite get there. I've seen people toss it into decks occasionally, but it was never a significant part of the meta that I could see, and certainly not recently. The chart here shows basically flatlined Bog Slosher, no play at all. But because of the Shaman Battle Cry quest, Corrupt the Waters, suddenly Bog Slosher makes a lot of sense. You've got cheap, bounceable things like Lackeys and other Battle Cries that you like replaying them, because the Battle Cry is where most of the value is bundled into those cards, and since they're 1/1s, buffing them into like 3/3s or higher can actually be really cool as well. So Bog Slosher is just like a perfect fit for Battle Cry Shaman, and that's why we see it spiking into some pretty significant levels of play. Now, I do not think Battle Cry Shaman is going to be a top tier deck. We might see this droop a little bit over time, but nonetheless, it'll be out there as a way to play Shaman, and I think Bog Slosher will remain a key component to helping you activate that quest more quickly, because you're getting, a Battle Cry with Bog Slosher himself, and then getting an extra Battle Cry with his bounce, but also as a bonus once you've completed the quest. He's really cool too. Slam a Kobold Lackey, deal 4, bounce it back, deal 4 again. Like, that's an amazing sort of thing that Bog Slosher enables to give that deck a lot of extra reach, and sometimes just some extra value as well. So a fantastic card. I'm really, really happy to see this one brought back to life in particular. And there you go, folks. 5 cards that were brought back to life by Savers of Uldum. Now, I want to reemphasize, there were a lot more cards I could have put on this list, particularly like Battle Cry Shaman cards or Choose One Druid cards. Like, there were a lot of those that got brought back to life, but I didn't want to make a video of 15 cards and they're all kind of from the same deck or class. So I tried to mix it up a little bit, maybe choose some representative cards more than anything else. But if you feel like there was a deck or a class or an archetype that wasn't represented in this video, please share that in the comments below. I want to hear your thoughts. What other cards have you seen finding success these days that never did in the past, and you're happy about it, or maybe you're upset about it because it's annoying to deal with now? Share all those comments below. But until then, thank you so very much for watching, and until next time, game on.